Yes, he asked the moment that he received the call. Hello, Major Jackson. I have been informed by Major Alonso that you are being required by the Colonel. There is a current situation where you are needed urgently. Valnaro replied with respect. Although it was true that he was older than Jack, when it came to military, the matter of age didn't matter. Now, Jack was a major while he on the other hand was only a captain. And as a result, he had to give Jack all the due respect that he deserved. Jack frowned the moment that he heard that. According to the agreement that they had come to, it was said that he had the decision to make a choice of whether to go or to stay whenever he was summoned. And right at this moment, he wasn't ready to do anything that was concerning the military. That was due to the fact that his hands were already full with the tasks that he was planning to accomplish. Just as he was wondering what to say, Valnaro continued. Major Jackson, I know that you are occupied with something at the moment because you are a busy person. But it is particularly rare for the Colonel to actually summon even any of the current majors. What I am trying to imply is that, this is actually an emergency that concerns the whole military system of the country. Your help is needed. Since Valnaro was present during the time that Jack was being granted the position of the major in the military, he also knew about the situation. He knew for the fact that Jack was a free person even though he was a soldier. There weren't particularly many rules that were binding him to the military. And for that reason, considering that Major Alonso had insisted that this was something urgent, and it required Jack's assistance, he knew that he had to find a way that he was going to convince Jack to accept. Jack frowned. At this moment, he was wondering what this thing that concerned the whole country's military system was. Could it be concerning the body-strengthening solution? But the next moment, he shook his head considering that this was something that if it was the one that was causing a problem, perhaps Valnaro would have already talked about it rather than keeping it a secret. From how it seemed, Valnaro wasn't even sure about what it was that the Colonel was summoning Jack for. After thinking for a while, he decided that he was going to make a trip towards the garrison once again. Perhaps, he could utilize this chance to find the information about that particular person who was involved in the matter of the attack on his hotel. It had already been long enough ever since that information was revealed to the military. Jack had not taken any action since he was quite lazy to do that. But perhaps, he might utilize this chance to give a warning to anyone who was daring to think about utilizing any underhanded tricks on him. Okay then. Should I drive there or are you coming to pick me up? Jack questioned. Valnaro was surprised when Jack easily agreed. He had already been preparing several ways that he was going to utilize to convince Jack to agree. Nevertheless, since Jack had agreed, there was no need for him to think about the unnecessary things. No need for you to drive. I'm coming to pick you up in a helicopter because the distance is quite huge as well as considering the fact that this is an emergency. Valnaro replied hurriedly. Jack's brows rose a little but he had no reason to refuse and immediately accepted. The least time that he utilized to handle the situation the better. After chatting for a little while to make a few arrangements with Valnaro, Jack immediately looked at the two ladies who were looking at him curiously. Jack looked at Celine apologetically as he said, I'm sorry. Something suddenly came up and I'm required in the military. It seems that there's something that has suddenly happened. So, the training will have to be rescheduled. Celine already knew about the information that Jack was part of the military. This was something that Jack wasn't intending to hide from her. As for Olivia, she also knew about Jack being part of the military after he showed her a badge during the time that he had gone over to take Nathan. As such, the matter concerning him going to the military was nothing that was considered a secret in front of the two ladies. Could it be related to the information that I received recently that there have been several soldiers who have been killed mysteriously? Celine asked curiously and at the same time worriedly. I think you should take a look at. It was only at the mention of this incident by Celine that Olivia suddenly remembered something. Her heart began beating faster. She was having a certain premonition. Could this matter be related to the thing that my father mentioned? If that is the case, then this matter really concerns Jack. But what is it really, because the information that I received doesn't point at anything particularly, Olivia thought to herself. Since she was part of the police force, she had of course heard about the incident where several soldiers had been killed off mysteriously. Of course, this matter had been sealed by the military so that it could not reach the public. But all the same, she had managed to find the information as there was no way that something like that was going to be hidden from all eyes. She was currently getting nervous. She had only succeeded at this moment on getting Jack to agree on being her teacher. But now, Jack was about to go away. If anything happened to him, then there was no way that she was going to be trained in her combat skills. I don't really know about the current situation. I was so focused in writing the scripts that I even forgot about keeping a tab on the news. Jack shrugged his shoulder as he replied. Celine was really worried about this situation now. If this was a matter that really concerned the soldiers that had been killed off mysteriously, then perhaps Jack might be in danger. Then, can you take Denali along? She questioned. At this moment, she definitely knew the fact that Denali was stronger than Jack, even though it was only by a little bit. For that reason, since she was not capable of protecting Jack by herself, she had to entrust another person to do that. There's no need for you to worry about that. Where I am heading to is the military headquarters. That is a place that civilians are not easily allowed. But don't worry, I will be careful. Jack knew that Celine was worried about him. But even so, he felt his ego as a man being hit hard. After all, his girlfriend was actually trying to tell him to go and get protected by another woman. How was he supposed to raise his head high if something like that really happened? It seemed that he had to exploit the system further, so that he can get even stronger than he currently was. Just from the fact that Denali was currently stronger than him after taking the body strengthening solution, then there was a proof that he could get stronger than he currently was. After waiting for a while, he heard the sound of a helicopter approaching. Even without the need of going outside the villa, he immediately knew that this was the military helicopter that had come over. The distinct sound was easily recognized by him. The three of them got out of the villa and waited until the helicopter landed, and immediately after that, the doors of the helicopter opened as Valnaro, who was accompanied by two other soldiers, alighted. When he saw Jack, he immediately went ahead and gave a military salute. At the same time, the other two soldiers also did the same thing. Even though this was the first time that they were meeting Jack, considering that Valnaro had that much respect and was even willing to offer a military salute to Jack, then that implied that Jack's position in the military wasn't low. There's no need for the formalities. I don't think that we have a lot of time, so let's get going. Jack waved his arm as he said. Yes, sir. Valnaro and the other two immediately replied. After that, they stood at the side as they waited for Jack to board the helicopter. Jack looked at Celine and gave her a hug. Immediately after that, he looked at Olivia and said to the two of them, I will be back, perhaps today or tomorrow. But I'm pretty sure that I won't be staying there for more than 2 days. Be careful. Celine reminded. I will be waiting. Even though she was feeling anxious at the moment, Olivia knew that she had to be patient. As for Valnaro, he felt the corners of his lips twitch. He was currently wondering how Jack could immediately decide on the period that he was going to stay there even though he didn't know why he was being summoned. Even so, he didn't say anything about the situation. He patiently waited and followed Jack inside the helicopter that soon took off. As the two of them watched as the helicopter disappeared into the horizon, Celine looked at Olivia and questioned, do you perhaps have any insider information about the issue concerning the soldiers that had died recently? When she heard Celine's question, Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. Do you perhaps have any insider information about the issue concerning the soldiers that had died recently? When she heard Celine's question, Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. Even so, she decided to reply honestly about the information that she had received recently. She knew that this matter was related to what had happened during that time. Even if this was not something that related to it directly, it still had some kind of relation to it. And as a result, just like Jack, who was at the center of the situation, she was also a part of it. Perhaps she might do well and inform another person about it. And considering that Celine was Jack's lover, perhaps there was no harm in informing her about what had really transpired during that particular day that she was escorting Nathan to the prison. While the two ladies were talking to each other, Jack was resting inside the cabin of the helicopter. He had his eyes closed as he continued making several plans that he was going to carry out as soon as possible. Considering the fact that the month was just about to end, and considering the fact that he was also quite weak, he might as well do something like getting several fighting clubs and so on so that he can increase the chances that he can get something that might increase his strength and fighting capabilities. He wasn't willing to be called a weakling, and neither was he ready to be in a position where he couldn't even help the people that he loved because of the fact that he was weak. With the appearance of the people from the Stronghold, he knew that the current situation of the country wasn't particularly good. Even though there were several incidents where several people got killed, that was something that rarely happened. But now, not to mention about the police officers that were escorting Nathan to prison, now, there were even soldiers that were dying. This wasn't a good indication. And currently, Jack could already guess that if there was something that really had such a big impact in the military, it might as well be related to the strongholds. Even though the chances were low, Jack still had to be prepared about it. Silence dominated the helicopter as it flew at the most rapid speed that it could. The pilot also knew about the emergency of the situation, and that was the reason as to why he was hurrying up. After about 30 minutes of flight, the helicopter finally landed. Jack was currently sure that they were already several kilometers away from the capital city. But this was to be expected considering that a military camp could not be situated in the middle of the city. With the several exercises and training that were being carried by the soldiers, they would really need a jungle. Looking down from the helicopter, Jack could say that this place was far bigger than the place where Valnaro had taken him to. This was to be expected because the place where he had met with Major Alonso was just the 11th Company base. As for here, this was the headquarters of the military of the central province of the country. Below, Jack could see several training grounds as well as several buildings. He of course knew that this was the center of all the companies that were situated around the central province. And for that particular reason, it wasn't a surprise that there were several buildings that could be used as armories. When the helicopter landed, Jack saw that Major Alonso was actually there waiting for him. He couldn't help but be curious about how the situation was, that even a major was willing to wait for him, and anxiously at that. After he got down, Major Alonso didn't waste time with the military salute and so on. He knew that Jack was a casual person and didn't really like to follow most of the military rules. "Thank you for availing yourself, Jack. We really need you this time," Alonso stated. "What is the situation that really needs me?" Jack questioned curiously. "Well, this isn't the place to talk about it. Let's get going to the conference room where the colonel is currently waiting for you. There are other majors that are present and it might be a good thing for you to get acquainted with each other," Alonso stated. He knew that the matter concerning Jack was something that couldn't be discussed casually. Even though there were several soldiers that already knew that Jack was a part of the military, they didn't know the details. Jack nodded and followed Alonso. As for Valnaro and the others, they had other things to take care of and as a result they couldn't follow in. Anyway, they wouldn't be allowed in even if they followed. Alonso and Jack headed for the building that was the most magnificent amongst all. This was the place where strategies and other things were being taken care of at. The building was like a big warehouse and had several satellite dishes and towers on top. It was obvious that this was the command center of the military. After entering the building, they walked across several corridors and encountered other soldiers that were still moving around. These soldiers would always give Alonso a military salute as they were familiar with him. "I think you should take a look at." As for Jack, they were just curious about him. But all the same, none of them dared to disrespect him considering that he was walking shoulder to shoulder with Major Alonso. After a while, they arrived in front of a room. Alonso opened the door and ushered Jack inside. Even though the both of them were in the same military rank, Jack could be considered as a visitor. When Jack got inside, he found that there were 5 people already waiting, and the moment that he stepped inside, each and every eye focused on him. He frowned for a moment as he realized that there were several gazes that weren't particularly friendly at him at all. Since this was the first time that they were meeting, Jack was wondering what he had done to get into these people's bad sides. All the same, he ignored everyone in the room and focused his gaze on the person who was seated at the head of the table. He could immediately tell that this person was the colonel. "Come in, Major Jackson. Please have a seat." The colonel pointed towards the seats that were around the rectangular table. Jack nodded at everyone before finally taking position at one of the seats that was at the far end of the rectangular table. After all the other seats had already been occupied by the 5. After Jack sat down, the colonel looked at the other majors who were around the table. And the next moment, they began introducing themselves and the roles that they played in the military. Jack wasn't particularly keen about these people at all. What mattered to him currently was the reason as to why he had come over. "As for me, I am Colonel Edison. And the reason as to why I summoned you to come over is simply because we are encountering a problem that is quite difficult for us to handle." After everyone introduced themselves, the colonel spoke. Jack didn't say anything and waited for the colonel to continue, and slowly, Jack was informed about the current situation, as well as the fact that there was a person who was looking for a particular soldier who was involved in the incidents concerning a prisoner who mysteriously disappeared. The more that he heard that, the strange Jack's expression became. He was now wondering what kind of luck this was. He knew for the fact that the person who was being looked for was him. And from the way that Edison was talking, it was clear that he didn't know that Jack was the one who had taken Nathan away. But all the same, Jack was now even more concerned. It wasn't that he was afraid about the fact that this was someone from the Stronghold who had come over. But, it was due to the fact that they were still looking for Nathan. He was now wondering what kind of importance Nathan had towards these people that they had to put in a lot of effort just to get him. Furthermore, they had sent over a very skilled person who was supposed to get Nathan. Learning from the fact that the man that he killed previously wasn't ordinary, Jack was sure that the one who had been sent over this time was definitely stronger. So, what am I required to do? Jack questioned. He didn't reveal the fact that the person who was being looked for was himself. Even so, he decided that he was going to handle the situation in case he was needed. Because of him, there were already several soldiers that had already been killed. But even if he was given a chance to go back in time, Jack would still do the same thing that he did. He would destroy Nathan. That was not negotiable. Well, from the information that I have about you, I know that you are a skilled person, and for that reason, I would like to inquire if you can handle him. It is not a must for you to subdue him, but you can simply ensure that he doesn't kill other soldiers. As for us, we will take this chance to deal with those idiots that are already surrounding our borders. This can be considered as a mission. And since this is a very tricky and dangerous mission, we will have to give you rewards that match the current risk that you are taking, Edison replied. That was the plan that he had in his mind. Even he himself knew that it was difficult to handle a person who was not only skilled, but even well equipped. So, it would be good enough if Jack could keep that person in check. Considering the skills that Jack had, as long as they armed him almost to the same level as that person, they could perhaps ensure that he doesn't kill the civilians and neither does he kill the soldiers as well. As for him and the other soldiers, they would utilize this chance to give back up to the borders. They wanted to deal with the enemies that were trying to put a lot of pressure on them. Since they were already so advantageous, they might as well utilize this chance to beat those enemies of theirs back. If the problem that was inside was contained, it would be surprising for those that were planning to utilize this chance to their benefit. May I know where this particular person is? Jack was currently looking forward to meeting this person. Furthermore, he was wondering just what kind of equipment this person was putting on so that he could actually deal with soldiers easily. Additionally, he didn't even ask about the reward that he was going to receive. Since the military already owed him something, he might as well continue waiting for the chance that he might have to use the favor that they owe him. But even though he was curious, that didn't mean that he was careless. Before even the colonel could answer, the other majors who were present in the room were immediately flabbergasted by what they heard. This was the first time where they had seen a soldier being given a mission by his superior, then being promised a reward after he had completed that particular mission. And that reward that was promised was like a compensation for disturbing that soldier. It was as if that soldier was not supposed to carry any kind of mission without compensation. They, on the other hand, were always trying hard to complete the missions because, if they failed, there would always be punishment that would come after that. Since they didn't know the particular details that concerned the recruitment of Jack into the military, they were indeed surprised. After all, at the moment, the colonel wasn't talking to Jack as a superior, but as a person who had gone to look for assistance from Jack. This was just incredulous. In their minds, they were wondering if the colonel and Jack were playing a trick on them or not. How could they believe that the military's unspoken rules that had always been followed were being broken this instant and so casually? Even though it was true that nobody had ever prohibited someone who had a higher rank from asking for assistance from a person who was at a lower rank, but still, most of the time, it was always a command coming from the person who was at a higher rank in the military. Edison completely ignored the majors as they looked at each other. Although it was true that they had a lot of questions that they wanted to ask, they knew that they could not interrupt the colonel. This was an ironclad rule. According to the information that we received previously, that person is currently inside the capital city. And, he is currently staying inside a hotel that is not so big or popular. Well, that was only before the current incident happened. Edison replied to Jack's question. Immediately after that, he gave Jack the information about the whereabouts of that person. They had always been keeping an eye on that person to make sure that he doesn't do anything. Well, that was supposed to be the point of keeping an eye on him. But even now, if that person decided to kill several civilians, there was nothing that they could do to stop him. They were powerless in front of him. Can it be confirmed that the person is still there? I don't want to make useless trips, Jack questioned. He knew that human beings that were not bound could make several moves. As such, it wasn't written on stone that the person was going to remain in the same position till he arrived at the scene. Since he currently wasn't ready to make several round trips, it would be better if he ensured that the information that he received about the whereabouts of that person was correct. Just as the colonel was about to instruct one of the majors to confirm about the information, there was a knock at the door of the strategy room. When the door opened, they saw that a soldier who was at a captain rank coming in with an anxious expression on his face. "What is the matter?" The major who was in charge of the second company questioned impatiently. He really didn't like a meeting like the one that they were holding being interrupted without any good reasons. "Sir, the target has moved from the location that he previously was in. We have tried getting his current location but we have failed." After giving a military salute, the captain gave the report that he had brought over. The expressions of everyone in the room turned tense. They knew for the fact that the person whom they were keeping an eye on had promised that if he did not receive the soldier that he was looking for, he would kill several civilians. For him to be making such a move, it was completely unexpected as the timeline that he had given had yet to elapse. "Hurry up, get everyone ready. Try and look for his whereabouts. It doesn't matter where he is, but try to know what location he currently is in. And make sure that you don't engage him whenever you locate him. Just keep an eye on him." Without waiting for the majors to say anything, Edison immediately instructed. He knew the urgency of the matter and wasn't willing to risk anything. The soldier gave a military salute as he immediately left to pass the command that he had been given. Jack on the other hand couldn't help but be slightly disappointed, but at the end of it all, he could only shake his head. "Since his whereabouts are yet to be found, I guess I will be leaving now. Inform me when you get his location. As for now, I have something else to take care of," Jack stated as he stood up. "What do you mean by expecting us to inform you when his location has been found? Aren't you supposed to be on standby so that you can take action the moment that you are informed about his location?" The major who was in charge of the first company questioned. "I think you should take a look at." Jack looked at him for a moment before he replied, "I don't think I have that much time to waste waiting for the location to be granted to me. As for being on standby, who told you I will not be on standby even if I am not in the military camp?" The expression of that major turned ugly. As a major who was in charge of the first company, he had always been respected by the other majors. But now, not to mention respect, it seemed that Jack really didn't care about his position. He was just about to retort when suddenly, Edison spoke. "It is okay. You will be informed the moment that we find the location of that person. I hope that you will be ready by that time as you can be contacted at any moment." "Got it." Jack nodded before he finally left the room. At the outskirts of the capital city, there were two people that were standing looking at each other tensely. None of them dared to make a move as they observed each other. "I never thought that a guardian of the Panthers organization will actually come to such a desolate place." The lady who was standing in front of Eric spoke. She was quite nonchalant in the way that she spoke. But, from the way that her muscles were tense, it was obvious that she was ready for anything. "Humph. You're talking as if you were not in that same desolate place as well," Eric snorted as he replied. The lady was silent for a moment. After a while, she spoke again. "Of course, I don't think I can be counted alongside you considering that I only came because you came. I'm quite curious about what really brought you to this part of the world. It is not easy for anything to attract a guardian of the Panthers organization, you know?" Eric was currently fuming inside. He had never thought that even before he completed the mission that he had been given, there would be someone who would be keeping an eye on him. Although it was true that he was expecting that there will be someone keeping an eye on him, he never thought that the person would be at this level. The lady that was standing in front of him was at the same level as him. Currently, she was wearing a white armor that was etched with several butterfly images. She was a member of the Butterfly organization in the same stronghold as him. And just like him, she was also wearing a badge that contained 8 stars. So, Eric knew that in order to complete the mission that he was given, he had to find a way that he was going to make the lady in front of him not interrupt. Moreover, he had to make sure that the lady doesn't know the importance of the matter that had brought him over. And he knew that since she was already here, there was definitely another person who was going to come again. With the two guardians of different organizations making a move, heading in the same direction, this was definitely going to attract even bigger attention. And if more people came over, it would be even more hard for him to complete the task that had been granted to him. What Eric was currently fearing was attracting the attention of the opposing part in the organization that he was from. Since they too knew about what they had found 5 years ago, they would definitely get a clue about the matter when they came over. "What really brought you over?" the lady asked. "Samantha, why don't you just mind your own business and stop poking your nose in other people's business?" Eric asked in an irritated tone. "How can I do that? You have to know that anything that you do concerns me. Every organization in the Stronghold is competing for the position of supremacy. As such, how can I just ignore suspicious moves that are made by our opponents? Samantha smiled as she questioned. Eric's brows furrowed as his expression turned ugly. If he could, he really wished to fight the lady that was in front of him right at this moment. But, he knew this wasn't the time for them to fight. After thinking for a while, he gritted his teeth as he spoke. What about this? You don't interfere negatively in what I'm going to do next. On the other hand, you can ask for something as compensation from me as long as it is reasonable. Samantha was quite surprised to find that Eric was actually willing to promise something like that. If she was given a chance to ask for anything from him, didn't that mean that whatever Eric possessed currently was not as worth as the one that he was here to get? After thinking for a while, she smiled as she asked, I have a suggestion. What about this? Instead of me asking for something from you, why don't we cooperate in finding what you are looking for, then we can share it? After thinking for a while, she smiled as she asked, I have a suggestion. What about this? Instead of me asking for something from you, why don't we cooperate in finding what you are looking for, then we can share it? Even though she had previously planned to make sure that Eric was going to break the agreement that was being held by all the organizations present in the Stronghold, she had given up on that matter. Of course, that was only if she gained a considerable amount of benefit from the trip that she had made. In case there wasn't any benefit that she was going to receive, then she was going to make sure that he broke the agreement. Before the two of them met, she had always been keeping an eye on him. She had seen as he killed off several soldiers. In the end, she wasn't a saint and wasn't willing to intervene. But due to a certain mistake where a certain idiot came and tried to hit on her, she was forced to utilize her strength to deal with several bodyguards. The moment that she utilized her strength, she was immediately detected by Eric, who rushed over. And since the two of them could not communicate in the middle of the city, they rushed off to the outskirt of the city. Dream on. I was offering you a chance to receive something from me, but you are actually asking for more? Eric was immediately infuriated when he heard Samantha's words. Not to mention, if the two of them could actually share what he had come over to take, this was something important that, if possible, he really wanted to hide anything concerning it from her. After all, right at this moment, he wasn't just representing the side that he was in the organization, but also the whole organization. Even though the mission that had brought him here was for the side that he was representing, but all of it was for the good of the organization. They had been keeping a secret for 5 whole years, and he wasn't willing to be the one who was going to leak that secret outside. He was sure that the moment that this information reached the other organizations, these organizations would definitely do everything they could to get that something that they had obtained 5 years ago. So, the matter of the cooperation between the two of them was something that Eric didn't really want to consider. I gave you an inch, yet you are trying to take a mile. This was just an offer that I gave you. It doesn't mean that I am afraid of you or something. If you want us to fight, then bring it on. Eric spoke in anger. At this moment, his face was already flashed red from the anger that he was trying to contain inside him. He was always a short-tempered person, but he was trying to rein in the anger that he was having inside him. Samantha had never expected that Eric would react in such a manner. But considering that a guardian was required for something like this, then it meant that whatever he was here to acquire was so important to the organization. At this moment, Samantha was already thinking of ways to acquire the thing that Eric had come over to acquire. Perhaps if she could manage to get that thing to the organization, not only would she be rewarded, perhaps even her organization's strength might rise. Just thinking of that made her eyes glitter with excitement and expectation, and since that was the case, she was definitely not willing to let Eric succeed easily. What? I am offering cooperation so that we can complete whatever you have come over to look for as soon as possible before other organizations come over. I am sure that you don't want even more attention apart from the one that you are receiving from me now, right? Samantha stated. Although it was true that Eric was currently angry, he knew that whatever Samantha had stated was right. Right now, the only option that he had was to find a way to deal with Samantha. And immediately after that, he had to rush up things so that he could complete the mission that he received as soon as possible. Otherwise, with great attention on him, it would be a question whether he could actually complete the mission, or he might be forced to go back to the organization empty-handed just to preserve the secret. His lips were twitching as he tried contemplating on what to do. No matter how hard he thought about it, he really couldn't find a solution that was going to solve the current situation. What do you think? I know that you are currently looking for a certain soldier, but with the skills that you possess, I don't believe that you can find that soldier at all. Upon seeing that Eric was silent, Samantha spoke. You should know about my abilities at this moment. I can easily find the target that you are looking for, and as such, I can easily help you find the target so that we can complete the mission maybe by tomorrow. Additionally, I would be doing the majority of the task. So, why is it that you are hesitating just because of 50% of what you are actually here to look for? Samantha continued. Eric looked at her with an ugly expression on his face. Even though he wanted nothing less but to beat Samantha up, he managed to hold back his temper. I think you should take a look at. What I'm looking for is a person. So, do you think that we can share a person 50-50? Eric questioned with narrowed eyes. Samantha had never expected that what Eric was actually looking for was a person and not something from that person who he was looking for. But still, she didn't believe that there was a chance of that Eric was going to utilize to look for a person, just because he wanted to see that person. There had to be a reason as to why he was looking for that person. Even though she knew that Eric wasn't willing to reveal that information, then she had to force him to do so. With that thought, her eyes shone with a mysterious glint. It is not hard to divide a person into two pieces, right? Samantha asked with a smile on her face. Veins popped up on Eric's forehead. He was finding it difficult to restrain the anger that was already raging inside him. What the FCK do you think you are talking about? I came here to look for a person, and now you are trying to tell me that you are going to help me so that I can go back with half of the dead body of the person that I am looking for? Are you mad or something? Eric practically roared in anger. Samantha's expression on the other hand was nonchalant. She really didn't care whether Eric was angry or not. It was not like she was afraid of him. If he wanted a fight, then she could definitely fight him. When he saw that Samantha wasn't willing to compromise, Eric could only swallow the anger that he had. Since it was this way, then there was nothing that he could do. To preserve the information that he had to find a way to escape from the perception of Samantha. In that way, he could complete the mission so that he could get out of here as soon as possible. On the other hand, if he failed to do that, then he might as well return to the Stronghold so that they could send a person who was at a lower level than him to complete the mission. Even though the movements that the two organizations had made had already attracted attention, and this was going to make sending another person over quite difficult, Eric didn't have a choice. No, it should be that this was the best choice that he currently had. If he wanted the secret to be preserved, he had to abandon the mission that he had been given. As for killing the person who was responsible for killing Yona and the others, that was something that he didn't take seriously at all. He believed that a person who was at a lower level than him could complete the mission as well. As long as that person wasn't part of the Stronghold, or wasn't an elite, the elite from their Panthers organization could take care of him or her. Without saying another word, Eric turned around and headed towards the city. From his actions, it was clear that there was no any other negotiation that was going to take place. Everyone for themselves at the moment. Samantha watched as Eric left with a smile on her face. Even though she wasn't sure of the reason as to why Eric was looking for that soldier, she might as well help him in looking for that soldier. Of course, she wasn't going to look for that soldier so that she can hand him over to Eric. Instead, she was going to try to look for information from that person. And if she failed, she can utilize that person to do a trade with Eric for something bigger. Although she could have agreed to the condition that she could ask for something from Eric, she didn't want that. She wanted to have the advantage when it came to bargaining. Immediately after that, she too headed back to the city. She believed that with her abilities, she would be able to find that soldier very soon. Jack had no information that currently, he was being looked for by two powerful people. In fact, one of them had an ability of tracking and he might actually be found very soon. Jack was currently back in his villa. Since he had left, the two ladies had also left the villa to do other things. So, he was alone in the villa. He was currently on the phone with Denali. Denali, I would like you to make several purchases of fighting clubs. Anything that relates to fighting, I would like you to acquire as many as possible. And, please make sure that you don't merge them now. The merging can be done during the next month just like how we are going to deal with the two entertainment companies, Jack instructed. On this day, Jack was seated inside his villa, patiently waiting for the system prompt to appear. Today was the day that he was going to receive the monthly income. Although it was true that there were several hundreds of thousands that had already been deposited into his account, the system wasn't going to multiply them by 100 times unless it was at the end of the month. This was the period that Jack was expectantly waiting for. He had already made several arrangements on what he was going to utilize to exploit the system. There was a trend that he had noticed. Other than the grocery department where the rewards that he received didn't relate to the grocery department at all. All the other first income rewards that he had received so far were all aiming to boost something that was related to that department. A good example being the body-strengthening pill recipe that he had received after he earned income from participating in a fighting tournament. And for that reason, Jack had already made several arrangements in order to get things that are related to the area that he really needs assistance. The first one would definitely be the increase in his strength. Apart from the time that he had been injured by a bullet, the appearance of people from the Stronghold had already given him warning bells. And during these days that had passed by, he had gotten enough information about the person that the military was expecting him to take care of. That person was looking for him, and since that was the case, since he himself was involved in the incidents of the disappearance of Nathan, and had left Olivia with the information that he was a soldier, there was no need for him to make guesses about if that person was from the Stronghold or not. From the abilities that he had received information about, he knew that even if he went over, he would definitely be in a pinch when dealing with that person. It wasn't that he doubted the strength that he had, but it was just that the level of equipment that that person had was enough to tell him that it was not something simple that he could easily handle. After all, the other party had an armor that could easily block bullets of the highest caliber. And currently, the strength of his fists was definitely not comparable to the penetrative strength of a bullet. And apart from that, the other party had laser beams that could be used to easily kill others. In other words, the other party had a weapon that was even more superior to guns. And currently, in the face of guns, in case he faced a rain of bullets, Jack knew his limits. There was no way that he was going to survive a barrage of bullets. At least not yet. And that was the reason as to why he had decided to exploit the system to the maximum limit possible. And even though the fighting clubs that he had taken recently was close to the end of the month, to the system, something like that didn't matter. With Denali's efficiency, she had managed to acquire several fighting clubs. And she didn't take small ones at all. Considering that he was already having hundreds of billions in his account, Jack didn't care about using a lot of money to acquire them. With the mouth-watering offers that had been given to the fighting clubs, the owners of the fighting clubs and arenas immediately gave up on them. But of course, there are several that didn't agree to this. But to Jack, that was something that he didn't care about. If they didn't agree to sell it to him, then he would use business to easily destroy them so that he would not have any kind of competition. Jack had already learned a lesson. He knew that the smaller the first income that he received, the smaller the size of the first income reward that he was going to receive. For that reason, he had aimed for all the tops. He had to acquire as much as possible so that the reward that he was going to receive from the system was going to be satisfying enough. At the end of the day, who said that every reward that came from the system was going to be of assistance to him? He was given a Suzuki, and in the following time, he was offered a Bugatti Veyron. And looking at it, he wasn't lacking a means of transport when he received a helicopter. In other words, although the helicopter was useful, that didn't mean that it was urgently needed. The monthly income report is coming up next. A system prompt appeared before Jack's eyes, and before he could process anything else, another barrage of system prompts began appearing one after the other. You've earned $125 million from Good Vision Security Limited. Multiplier applied. You received $12.5 billion. You've earned $520 million from Brightway Medical Research Center. Multiplier applied. You received $52 billion. You have earned $252,500 from Eden Residential Building. Multiplier applied. You received $25.25 million. You've earned $432 million from the Rose and Calmond Entertainment Companies. Multiplier applied. You received $43.2 billion. You've earned $73 million from the Glaze Hotel. Multiplier applied. You received $7.3 billion. You've earned $98 million from Hope Hospital. Multiplier applied. You received $9.8 billion. You've earned $132 million from Prosperous Pharmaceuticals. Multiplier applied. You received $13.2 billion. I think you should take a look at. First income. As a reward, you receive professional medical skills. No missions needs to be completed so that the host can gain the skills permanently. You've earned $12.42 million from World Foods. Multiplier applied. You receive $1.242 billion. First income. As a reward, you receive professional chef skills. No missions need to be completed so that the host can gain the skills permanently. You've earned $21.67 million from the Future Techs. Multiplier applied. You received $2.167 billion. First income. As a reward, you receive a blueprint of anti-laser armor. You've earned $7.54 million. Multiplier applied. You receive $754 million. First income. As a reward, you receive plastic dissolution method. You've earned $179.64 million from Savage Arena, Generous Fighter, Vision Power and Attack to Survive Grounds. Multiplier applied. You receive $17.964 billion. First income. As a reward, you receive 4 levels of power improvement that can be claimed at will. With that, the system prompts finally ended. But even so, Jack continued staying in the same position, staring in front of him as if he was frozen in place. After a period of time, he finally reacted. His eyes shone with excitement. Slowly, a smile encroached on his face. And after a while, he began laughing loudly. What he had received from the system was definitely unexpected but welcomed. Although he had been expecting that he was going to get bountiful rewards this time, he had never expected that rewards that he was going to receive were going to be this rich. The amount of money aside, just the skills as well as several other rewards that he had received from the first income reward are enough to send several people crazy. The first skill that he had received was the medical skills that had come from the pharmacy. Although he wasn't sure how the pharmacy was related to a hospital, he still appreciated the reward that he had received. At least, he wasn't going to waste a free skill slot to get such a skill. After all, he was having a gut feeling that the free skill slots would be important in the near future. Additionally, since the longer period of time that he contained the free skill slots, the higher the quality of the skills that he was bound to receive, then he was willing to keep them even more. The same thing could be said about the professional chef skills that he had received. With the skills, he was going to perhaps give a few pointers to the shifts that were working in his Glaze hotel. Since he was aiming for monopoly, then he might as well try hard. The earlier he completed the conditions that had been given by the system, the better it was for him. The third reward that he had received was something that surprised him greatly. It was actually a blueprint for the manufacturing of an anti-laser armor. He wasn't sure if this was something that had been done deliberately by the system or not. After all, the enemy that he was supposed to face was someone who used laser beams as weapons. But just now, the system had granted him an opportunity to make something that can be used against that person. Well, it was not that he was complaining, but at least, for the first time, he thought that the system was quite reasonable. Then there was the plastic dissolution method. This was something that was from the Green World company that he had. That was a company that dealt with plastic and rubber. And since that was the case, the method that he had been granted was something that was definitely going to be important to that company. Even though he had yet to determine what method it was as he had yet to claim the rewards that he had received, he was sure that it wasn't something simple. Finally, there was something that made Jack's eyes glitter with excitement. In fact, it could be said that Jack was almost going mad from excitement. The first time that he had received a reward from the system that was related to increasing his strength, it was the pill recipe of the body strengthening pill. But this time, the reward that he had received was completely different. He had previously instructed Denali to buy quality fighting grounds. She had managed to purchase 4 of them, and this was just enough for the moment. Jack knew that he had to do a lot more in case he wanted to get even stronger than he currently was, or perhaps get what the system's limit was. Jack couldn't help but look at that system prompt once again. First income. As a reward, you receive 4 levels of power improvement that can be claimed at will. This was the main aim for all the things that he had done all along. He wanted to get stronger and the system was definitely helping him in doing so. And for that reason, he had to be ecstatic at least. System, can you help me with the categorization of my strength? Jack questioned. That was something that had been bothering him all along. Although he currently knew that he was 7 times stronger than a normal adult, that didn't mean that he knew about what level of strength he had. In other words, the current method that he was using to know his strength was just an estimation method. So, he had to find a way that his strength was going to be measured. Since the host insists, then the system will assist you with that. The strength of the human race in the world can be categorized by several levels. Each level is related to the number of times that that person's strength exceeds a human adult's strength. As such, the categorization of the strength is divided from the first level to the 10th level. At the first level, this is the strength of a normal adult. At the second level, this is the strength of a person who exceeds a normal adult by 1-fold. This goes on until level 10 where a person is 9 times stronger than a normal human. Currently, the host is 7 times stronger than a normal adult human. As a result, the host is at level 8. Jack finally understood. In fact, there was no difference from the current ranking system and the one that he was using to estimate his current strength. It was just that, his strength was 7 times that of a normal adult man. But the ranking was 1 level higher. System, is there a level beyond level 10? Jack asked curiously. If there really was, he was wondering at what level of strength that person would be having. Actually, that was the target that Jack was currently having. He knew that he couldn't possibly handle bullets at the level that he was in. He wasn't even sure about that even if he was going to be 4 levels higher. But then, with the 4 levels, did the system mean 4 levels of the ranking system or just another type of ranking? After all, if he was currently level 8, didn't that mean that he was going to be at level 12? But then, the system had stated that there were 10 levels of strength. Host, it is the system's hope that you don't bite more than you can chew. The system has already done you a favor by granting you the ranking system for free. I hope that you don't expect more free things from the system. The system hopes that the host can work even harder so that he can gain the rewards and income. Jack was left speechless by the system's remark. What the heck was the system implying? Since he was already at level 8, and the reward that he had received was 4 levels of increase in power, then why did the system give him a ranking that was going to be useless to him so soon? Since he had already learned a lesson from the system that it wasn't going to change the decisions that it had made, he decided to compromise for something else. Can you at least inform me if I am going to surpass the current ranking level that you have given me? Jack questioned. There was a moment of silence before Angel's voice finally echoed in his mind. According to the system's calculation, the host strength will definitely exceed the 10-level rankings. Although he wasn't given any further information, Jack was finally somehow relieved. At least, he was going to get higher and higher. As for whether he can handle the bullets after his strength had increased, that was a question that would have to be tested later on. After calming down, Jack finally decided to start claiming the rewards that had been granted to him. Of course, he began by claiming the rewards of skills. First, he began by claiming the medical skills. Just like before, a huge amount of information suddenly surged into his mind. And at that moment, as Jack continued processing the information, he began feeling familiar with the human body. The professional medical skills that he had received wasn't just based on a single department. Unlike the other doctors who always focused on a single part of a human body, like the eyes, dental, or the heart, Jack's situation was different. I think you should take a look at. The professional medical skills that he had received were aimed towards the whole of the human body. In other words, Jack was now capable of treating any kind of illness, regardless of what part of the body it was. But there was only something that made him slightly disappointed. That was the fact that, for the untreatable diseases, he had not been granted the ability to treat them. But still, it was still good enough that he had been given the ability to handle them well. As such, in case there was a person who was suffering from an infection that couldn't be treated, Jack would at least make sure that the condition wasn't worse. After about 1 whole hour of processing the information that he had received, Jack continuously got familiar with the body of a human. As he looked at his hand, he was surprised to find out that he could actually see where he was supposed to inject a certain type of medicine in case there was a need for. His muscle memory was also enhanced just like the time that he was given the combat skills as well as the driving skills. When he was once again ready, Jack immediately claimed the professional chef skills. Although the amount of information that was fed into his mind was not comparable to the one that he had received when he claimed the professional medical skills, the amount of information was still numerous. It wasn't just a matter of him knowing to cook a certain dish, but there are several recipes that he had received. And all these recipes that he had received were non-existent in the current world of foods. This made Jack's eyes shine with excitement again. This was something that was going to help him when it came to making sure that the Glaze Hotel dominated the market. Although it was true that it was going to be quite difficult for him to be a monopoly in the hotel industry, with both the money that he had and the recipe that he was gaining, he was sure that he could easily handle the other hotels. All that he had to do was to ensure that none of the recipes that he had were stolen. After he was done with that, Jack finally focused on the method of plastic dissolution. As the information was injected into his mind, Jack finally realized what it was. The method that had been granted to him was just like a recipe of making a solution. The method that he had received was going to help him in making sure that the recycling of plastic was going to be way easier. The plastic, no matter how it was, it would be easily turned into a solution. As for the solution, it could be utilized to make any plastic products. What this meant was that, instead of mixing several chemicals in order to make sure that the plastic was usable, just this solution that he had been granted by the system was enough. Since there were several types of plastics, as long as they were put inside a tank, then mixed with the solution from the system, the plastic would be turned into a solution as well. And after that, there would be several layers that would be separating the different types of plastic. Although it was true that he wasn't focusing on the plastic and rubber industry, it was good if it was going to be efficient. With that aside, Jack finally focused on the semi-final prize. A blueprint of making the anti-laser armor. A system prompt appeared even before he claimed the reward. You can get it inside the bedside cabinet. Without saying anything else, he simply shook his head as he approached the bedside cabinet. When he opened it, he found that there were several pieces of paper that had magically appeared inside. He took them and looked at the drawings and words that had been written on it. For a moment, he couldn't help but get stunned. It wasn't because of the drawing, but because of the content of words on the paper. The things that were being required to create the armor was something that Jack had never seen before. Reflection crystal. Metallic glass. Steel sandor. What the heck is this? Jack was flabbergasted. That was amongst the things that were being required when the armor was being made. And Jack had never heard of them before. Were they minerals or artificially made? System, how the heck is this armor supposed to be made if the materials that are required cannot be found in this world? Jack asked in a frustrated tone. Who said that the materials cannot be found in this world? They are there and they are so much abundant and cheap. It is just that you have never seen them before. Jack couldn't understand what the system was trying to imply. They are there, and furthermore, they are abundant and cheap as well. If that was the case, then how come he had never heard of them? He was sure that if any of them was present, he should have at least heard about it. Just like how you didn't know about the existence of the strongholds not long ago, that is just how you don't know about the existence of these materials. Jack remained silent as he tried contemplating on what the system was meaning. Even though he really wanted to argue with the system, there was nothing he could say about it. Moreover, this version of the system was not the type that could easily compromise with him. So, he doubted that it would change its decision and tell him the whereabouts of the material that he needed. System, is there perhaps a chance that I can encounter these materials as soon as possible? Jack asked. That was something that he had to look for a way to find. After all, the armor was something that was so important to him when he was going to face these people from the stronghold. With the weapons that they were having, without having anything that could protect him, he would surely be at a great disadvantage. If it was possible, he really wanted to make that armor as soon as possible, before he went and came head to head with the person from the stronghold. If you want to get into contact with the materials as soon as possible, then the system's suggestion is that you can get that piece of information from the person from the stronghold. Jack's mind went blank for a moment. The reason as to why he had asked that question was to forge an armor before he met with the person from the stronghold. But why is it that the system was saying that, for him to make the armor, he had to meet with the person from the stronghold first and get the information from him? But, isn't that going against the plan that he was having? Jack began thinking of any other method that he would utilize to get what he wanted. Although he knew that the person from the stronghold didn't know that he was the one whom he was looking for, there couldn't be a guarantee that that person wouldn't start fighting him just like how he killed of several soldiers. After a long while of contemplation, Jack finally came to a decision. Since there was no any other way, then he was going to utilize all the cards that he currently possessed so that he can gain the information from that person. And, the main card that he was having at the moment was the final prize that he had received. An increase in his strength by 4 levels. At this moment, he really wished to immediately claim the 4 levels so that he can get beyond level 10. But, he was having a gut feeling that just like the free skill slots that he had gotten from the system, perhaps these levels that he was receiving from the system were going to be important to him in the future. And after a while of thinking for a solution, he decided on one thing. He was going to save half of it and utilize the other half. System, I want to claim 2 levels from the final reward. Host, please confirm that you would like to claim 2 levels of increase in strength. When he saw that, Jack's eyes immediately shone with excitement. From what he could remember, the first time that he was trying to utilize the free slot, there was another confirmation prompt that had come from the system. And immediately after that, he had come to know that the longer the period that he had the free skill slot, the more value of the skills that he would receive from them in the future. Since that was the case, Jack was currently wondering what amount of strength would be added in case he came to utilize the 2 additional levels that he had left aside in the future. But of course, that was on a premise that the levels that he had been granted worked the same way as the free skill slots. I confirm that, Jack stated, Reward claimed. This time, the system didn't say a lot of words, and immediately after it confirmed that the 2 levels had been claimed by Jack, he felt a warm current rushing through his body. I think you should take a look at. Then, his muscles began getting tense and at the same time hot, but this was just a periodical thing. It ended after just 2 minutes or so. And when that happened, Jack realized that there was a great difference within him. He currently felt that he could freely control his body, more than he had ever done so previously. That implied that, not only had his strength improved, but even his body control had greatly improved. This immediately gave him an idea. Could it be that just like the first time that he received the combat ability, did other areas improve as well? Without wasting time, Jack immediately headed for the basement in the villa. After getting on the treadmill that was present in the gym, he began testing his speed. And true to his guess, he had actually become faster than he had ever been, and surprisingly, the improvement that he had gotten was not just a matter of 8+2, but an improvement in terms of quality. System, according to logic, shouldn't it be that I have only improved by 2 folds of a normal adult? Jack wouldn't help but question. The host has to note that, the improvement that he had received at this time doesn't concern the number of times that he was stronger than a normal adult man, but, in terms of levels. And after that, the system went silent, not giving any further information. Even though he wasn't given a detailed explanation, Jack could immediately tell that there was a great difference this time. Unlike the body strengthening solution that he had taken, which only improved his strength by 2 folds of a normal adult, the 2 levels that he had received from the system had improved him in terms of levels and not just strength. Shaking his head to dispel the thoughts for a moment, Jack finally decided to set aside the matter of his improvement in strength. Even though currently he was tempted to get the other 2 levels that he was putting aside, he managed to resist it. At this moment, Jack heard his phone ringing. Looking at the person who was calling, he found out that it was Valnaro. Without any delay, Jack immediately received the call. He had previously instructed Valnaro to look for the information about the person that had collaborated with the terrorists that had attacked his hotel. And due to the fact that Jack had decided to deal with that person, the military hadn't made any move on him at all. They were waiting for Jack to deal with that person before they could take him in to face the law. "Hello, Captain," Jack said. "Hello, Major Jackson. I have already gotten all the information that you wanted. I have compiled it all and sent it to your email," Valnaro stated. "I got that. Do you perhaps have any other reason for calling me?" Jack didn't believe that this captain was going to call him just to inform him that he had sent over the email. And true to his words, Valnaro replied, "Indeed, Major Jackson. The main reason as to why I called you is to inform you that we have gotten a few clues about the whereabouts of the person that we were supposed to deal with. His current location should be revealed soon, so I was informed to let you know as early as possible so that you can get prepared." "Okay then." Jack nodded before finally hanging up. His eyes were already glinting with excitement as he was looking forward to the opportunity that he could test his current strength. Although previously he wasn't sure about facing the laser beams that had always been talked about, this time, he had some kind of confidence that he didn't know where it came from. But all the same, due to the qualitative leap of his strength, he currently believed that even if he faced that person who was armed with laser weapons as well as a good armor, he wouldn't fall at a disadvantage. As for preparations, what could he do about that? The only thing that he could have done to prepare for this would be to make the armor. But without the materials that were needed, there was no way that he was going to make the anti-laser armor. He went back and sat on the bed in his bedroom. Just as he was about to take out his laptop and confirm the information that had been sent over, his phone rang again. "Hello Denali, what's up?" Jack asked after he received the call. "Boss, we are currently facing trouble. There's someone who is here to take away Madam," Denali replied anxiously. Jack's heart skipped a beat when he had that. He immediately shot to his feet with anger already blazing his eyes. Killing intent immediately enveloped the whole room. A few minutes ago, Celine and Denali were discussing together what moves they were supposed to make next, since Celine was also helping managing some of the companies that were owned by Jack, and she was also smart. The 2 ladies often discussed what they were supposed to do. Currently, they were inside a hotel. This was of course another branch of the Glaze Hotel that had been opened in the city. Due to the expansion of the hotel, Denali had suggested that the hotel could open several branches inside the city. This way, the number of customers that they would be getting would definitely increase. And since Jack didn't mind, they immediately agreed to that suggestion. The higher the number of hotels were opened, the higher the income that he was going to receive by the end of the month. It was just a pity that there wouldn't be any first income reward that would come from the branches. Jack had tried exploiting a bug from the system by trying to open several small hotels so that he could gain several fast income rewards. But in the end, the system shut down his dream. It stated that, as long as he currently possessed the Glaze Hotel, even if he decided to open several small hotels, he was not going to receive any first income reward because he had already targeted the hotel as a monopoly in the future. This meant that, as long as Jack was intending to make any of his companies a monopoly, there was no way that he was going to receive any first income reward from opening several companies of the same industry. The only way that he was going to gain the first income reward was by purchasing other companies, and during the following month, he could go ahead and merge them. Back to the present, the two ladies were currently inside a private room that they had taken. Since they were discussing business, it was obvious that they wouldn't discuss something like that in public. Denali, do you think that there's a way that we can speed up the merging process of the two entertainment companies? Celine asked as she put down the glass of orange juice. Currently, she was wearing a white blouse and a black skirt alongside matching high heels. Denali thought for a moment before she finally came up with an idea. I think the best way that we can use to complete the merging process as soon as possible is by making the two to become twin companies. Denali on the other hand was wearing a green dress that accentuated her figure. With her always cold expression, she looked like a cold beauty. Huh? What do you mean by that? Celine was confused as she asked. Instead of trying to shift everything from one company to the other, we can make them to be like partners. In this way, all the staff members of each company would remain in their own companies. Denali began explaining. Later on, it can be considered as a partnership between the two companies. They would be sharing information, content, or they would sometimes be producing the same thing by sharing the stars. Celine thought about that and found that this was indeed the best way. She didn't know the reason as to why Jack was hurrying to merge the two companies. But still, she wanted to support him fully. Since she wasn't strong enough to protect him, then she might as well help him with some of the miscellaneous things. By the way, do you think that it is possible for us to purchase a few more companies? It seems that Jack wants to become a monopoly in the entertainment industry as well, Celine asked. That is something that can be done. As long as we offer the owners of these companies offers that they cannot refuse, they would definitely sell their companies to us, Denali replied. With the business abilities that she currently possessed, she was so good at bargaining or discussing other things that were related to business. As such, it wasn't hard for her to convince others to sell their properties. That was just how she had managed to acquire some of the very best fighting clubs in the country. The two ladies then went ahead and continued discussing a few other things. Sometimes, Celine would ask for assistance from Denali about how she was supposed to handle some issues in the companies that she was managing. Even though she wasn't willing to agree that she was inferior to Denali, she had no choice but to do so. After all, not only was Denali good at fighting, but she was also good at business. But even so, she wasn't willing to give up and had decided that she was going to work even harder so that she could be of more assistance to Jack. As for Denali, since the two of them were not enemies, then she could use this chance to learn as much as possible from her. Even though she was prideful, she knew about the times where her pride was to be set aside. Knock, knock, knock. Just then, they had the sound of someone knocking at the door. The two ladies frowned as they were not expecting any guest at the moment. Denali got to her feet and went towards the door to open it. Still, she was quite impatient, as there was a person who was interrupting their discussion. The two ladies had formed a kind of bond of friendship and would discuss some things concerning ladies. That was what they usually did in case they wanted to relax. When she opened the door, Denali was surprised to find that there was an unfamiliar lady in front of the door. The lady was a beauty and she had a kind of charming feeling on her. I think you should take a look at. It was quite strange, but at this moment, Denali could feel that there was a hint of danger from the person in front of her. The lady was dressed in a long overcoat. This wasn't that much strange considering that it was raining so much recently, so the temperature were quite low. But with Denali's sharp gaze, she was able to easily tell that the lady was hiding something beneath that overcoat. Added with the danger that she had detected, she could immediately tell that the lady in front of her was quite suspicious. But what made Denali's heart palpate at this moment was that, ever since she had taken the body-strengthening solution, she had never met with the situation where she felt that there was danger. This was the first time. As for Jack, before he gave her the body-strengthening solution, she could immediately tell that he was stronger than her. But, the lady in front of her didn't give her any kind of signs that she was stronger. "Hello. I'm here to see someone," the lady stated with a smile on her face. But at the same time, in her heart, she was quite stunned. This lady seems to be different. But anyway, it doesn't matter as long as she doesn't get in my way. Otherwise, I'm going to finish her off, the lady thought to herself. "Hello. Who are you here to see?" Denali asked with a frown on her face. Not to mention the fact that they had prohibited the staff members of the hotel from giving information about the room that they were currently situated in. How was it possible that the lady in front of her knew that the person that she was looking for was present inside this private room? "I am here to look for Miss Celine. I have a business to talk with her," the lady stated. Denali frowned. The lady was actually looking for Celine? But, for some reason, Denali believed that the lady in front of her wasn't here for a good reason. "May I know who you are?" Denali questioned. "You can call me Samantha," the lady replied nonchalantly. That's right, the lady who was here was Samantha, who was also from the Stronghold. She had done her investigation and had already found the target, and that was the reason as to why he was here. Since she didn't know what it was that Eric wanted to get from that soldier, she decided that she was going to ask him direct, but she wanted to have a big bargaining chip. That was the reason as to why she had done her investigation and found out that Celine was Jack's girlfriend. With Celine's life in her hand, she would have another beginning chip after she managed to get Jack. The reason why she was so patient with Denali was due to the fact that, not only was Denali giving her a strange vibe, but she was not intending to utilize her strength because she was afraid that she would alarm Eric. At this time, Celine, who had been listening all along, came to the door with a frown on her face. She looked at the lady in front of her with confusion. "Miss, I don't think I know you. Could it be that you have mistaken me for someone else?" Celine couldn't help but ask. He. You are funny. How can I mistake you for someone else when I already said that I am looking for you? You not knowing me doesn't mean that I don't know you," Samantha chuckled as she replied. "What is it that you want to discuss with me?" After a moment of silence, Celine questioned. "It's quite simple actually. I want to borrow you for a moment so that I can get something from your boyfriend easily," Samantha replied bluntly. She wasn't afraid of the two ladies at all, and immediately revealed her intention. Both Denali and Celine were dumbfounded. They couldn't help but look at Samantha blankly as they wondered if she was playing a prank on them. Before they could react, at a fast speed, Samantha stretched her hand forward as she attempted to grab Celine. But just as the hand was about to get a hold of Celine, another hand appeared and blocked it by grasping it on the wrist. Immediately after that, Denali didn't hesitate and kicked Samantha away. She utilized her full strength this time. Bang! Samantha smashed onto the wall behind her. At this moment, her expression was quite strange as she looked at Denali. This was completely unexpected to her. At the same time, Denali took out her phone and immediately contacted Jack. "Hello Denali, what's up?" Jack asked from the other end of the call. "Boss, we are currently facing trouble. There's someone who is here to take away Madam," Denali replied anxiously. "Boss, we are currently facing trouble. There's someone who is here to take away Madam," Denali replied anxiously. Immediately after that, she immediately informed Jack about the location that they currently are in. She knew from the movements that the other party had made that the situation wasn't that simple to solve. Since she wasn't sure about what was going on, she had to do all her best to protect Celine. At the same time, since the lady in front of her had mentioned about Jack, then it meant that all of this was related to Jack and perhaps he might have a solution to the problem that she was facing currently. On the other hand, Samantha couldn't believe the current situation that she was in. She didn't feel the slightest pain at the moment. She was completely ignoring the effect that came after she had been kicked away. At this moment, her thoughts were churning, trying to look for a very reasonable explanation as to why this situation had occurred. But no matter how hard she used her brain, there was no any kind of reasonable explanation that came to her mind. In other words, Denali was something that she couldn't explain at all. At this moment, she didn't even notice when Denali had made a phone call. If this was before, when she was back at the Strongholds, she might have perhaps been sharper than this. But at this moment, she had completely lowered her guard to the level that she would not have dared to do so back at the Stronghold. There, a fight could erupt at any moment. As such, each and everyone present was always ready for war. But after she stepped away from the strongholds and came over to Azima country, she had always taken this as a vacation. In here, she didn't believe that she would have to fight with her full strength. The only person that she had to be wary of was Eric. But all the same, she didn't believe that Eric was going to fight her to the death. After all, that was something that was prohibited. Although the fights between the two sides could occur, there had to be a good reason for that to occur, but currently she didn't find any reason for that to happen. Yet at this moment when she had come over, she had thought that she had definitely won over Eric. But who would have thought that she was going to encounter Denali, who was going to be a hindrance to her? Since Denali was able to easily blow her away, that meant that in order to get past Denali, she would have to use her full strength. And the moment that she does that, she will definitely attract the attention of Eric. And if he realizes her plan, no, he should have already known that she was doing this. But if he knows that she had already found the target that he was looking for, then he was going to fight her, in order to get what he wanted. On the other side, after the call ended, Denali looked at the flabbergasted Celine and said to her, "You will have to get out of here as soon as possible. This person is not easy to deal with." From the strength that she had applied, in case she faced someone who was weak, she was sure that the other party was not only going to have a few broken bones, but they would already be grimacing in pain or maybe screaming. But the lady in front of her, other than the surprise that was visible in her eyes, there wasn't even a trace of pain in her eyes as she sat on the floor, staring back at her blankly. Although Celine wasn't willing to leave at this moment, she was logical enough to understand that in a fight that was at Denali's level, she was simply going to be useless. So, she prepared herself to get out of here and get Jack here as soon as possible. Even though she knew that Denali was Jack's secretary, she also had already formed a bond with Denali and the two of them were good friends. It was only when Celine was about to leave the area that Samantha reacted. She stood up to her feet as she dusted herself up. It was obvious that she wasn't hurt after that attack. "I will not allow you to leave. You will have to come with me," Samantha stated simply as she looked at Celine. Denali's brows furrowed deeply as she looked at the woman in front of her. At this moment, she didn't want to engage the lady in front of her in combat at all. Her current plan was to ensure that the two of them waited for Jack to arrive. As long as he came over, she believed that even if the lady in front of her was much stronger than her, the combination of the two of them would be enough to deal with her. She herself had already experienced Jack's terror. Even though she was currently stronger than Jack, when it came to skills that he possessed, she actually couldn't match him at all. "I think you should take a look at." Just like how she was a step ahead of him in terms of strength, he was also in front of her in terms of combat techniques and experience. "I don't know who you are, and I am not sure if we have ever offended you. But I hope that you mind your own business and don't dare to lay your hand on my boss's girlfriend," Denali stated coldly as she stared at Samantha. Samantha looked at Denali with a smile on her face. "I don't know which stronghold you come from. But all the same, I didn't expect that a person of your caliber could actually come to this backward place. All the same, as long as you stand in my way, I will deal with you as well. After all, this is my business." Denali's eyes got colder when she heard that. With the loyalty towards Jack that she possessed, there was no way that she was going to let something that he termed as precious to be taken away. Celine on the other hand couldn't leave because the only path outside this place was where Samantha was standing, so she could only stand where she was. Denali noticed something strange. Although the lady in front of her was saying that she was going to take Celine away, she wasn't making a move at all. It was as if she was afraid of something, and it definitely wasn't herself. She looked around suspiciously but she couldn't find anything. "You know, I have a small business to take care of with that boyfriend of yours. In case he cooperates, everything can be completed as soon as possible, without involving fights. But of course, if he doesn't want to cooperate, then I will have to use the extreme methods," Samantha said. "It doesn't matter what you say. But, as long as you dare to make a move on her, then I will fight you to the death," Denali stated resolutely. She was currently determined to fight the person in front of her even if it cost her life to ensure that Celine was safe. Samantha on the other hand was greatly surprised. She had never thought that Denali was serious about protecting Celine. From the determination in her eyes, Samantha could tell that Denali wasn't joking around. "We are both from strongholds. As such, we can be considered colleagues. So, why don't we make a trade? I will try to give you what that boss of yours offered you, and you will allow me to take her away. What do you think about my proposition?" Samantha asked. "It doesn't matter what you say. I will not allow you to touch her." Denali shook her head as she responded. It doesn't matter what it was that the other party was offering, but her loyalty to Jack was unshakable. As for the matter of her belonging to a certain stronghold, she didn't try correcting Samantha about that. After all, the more mysterious her identity was, perhaps the better it was for her. Samantha frowned. She had never expected that Denali wasn't willing to compromise in any way. At this moment, a hint of killing intent began appearing in her eyes. "If that is the case, then don't blame me about this," Samantha stated as she began taking off the overcoat that she was wearing. At this moment, she had already thrown away the thoughts that she was going to alarm Eric in case she utilized her full strength. If she wasn't willing to alarm him, then there was no way that she was going to get her target. At most, even if Eric came over, she could at least talk to him so that he could give her something in return for the assistance that she would have provided him with. Denali was careful, and ready to make a move the moment that the other party did. She was currently standing in front of Celine, ready to protect her from anything. As the overcoat that was draping over her body was removed, what was hidden beneath it was revealed to the eyes of the duo. They couldn't help but get stunned when they saw that beneath the long overcoat that Samantha was wearing, there was a sci-fi-like type of armor. On the left side of her chest, there was a badge that contained 8 stars. Although the two of them couldn't understand, they could immediately tell that the lady in front of them was even more mysterious than Yona. The two of them of course knew about the incident where Jack had taken Nathan away and killed him. So, they already knew about the strongholds in advance. "So, why don't we utilize our strength to see who has the right to acquire the girl behind you?" Samantha asked as she took a battle stance. "So, why don't we utilize our strength to see who has the right to acquire the girl behind you?" Samantha asked as she took a battle stance. Denali on the other hand was also ready for the fight. Even though she was surprised by the armor that was being worn by Samantha, she wasn't that much surprised because she had already got any information about the armor. But what she was wary about was definitely the laser weapons. She had never tested the power of the weapons before, and as such, she wasn't sure of the method that she was going to deal with them. But there was yet another thing that was currently disturbing her. That was the hotel. This was just one of the branches of the Glaze Hotel. Even so, this branch was just as important as the main hotel. She wasn't ready to clash with the lady in front of her inside the place where they were. She knew all too well that if a fight occurred between the two of them, there was bound to be a lot of destruction in the area. Since this was Jack's hotel, with her loyalty towards him, there was no way that she was going to allow the property that he owned to be destroyed, unless there was no any other choice. At this moment, if she was asked to choose between protecting Celine and protecting the hotel, she would definitely go for Celine. A building could be bought, but the same couldn't be said about Celine's life in case it was taken. "Why don't we take this fight out of here?" Denali asked. But all the same, she didn't have much hope that the lady in front of her was going to agree. After all, this was an advantageous situation for her. When she heard what Denali had proposed, Samantha contemplated for a moment. She was wondering why Denali actually cared about the low lives of the people that were present inside the hotel. But after thinking again, she thought that perhaps this was a good idea. Although she and Eric could fight, they could also kill, but they were not allowed to destroy a city. With the weapons that she currently possessed, if she was given time, she could definitely leave this city in ruins. That was just how terrifying the abilities of the guardians of the organizations were. At this moment, other than that, she believed that as long as she got out of the city, perhaps she might extend the period at which Eric would find her. For that reason, she might get a chance to slip away after defeating Denali. "If that is the case, then the girl behind you will have to come with us. After all, I am fighting you because I want to get her," Samantha replied. Denali frowned for a moment. They had already informed Jack about where they currently were. And so, if they moved away, they were going to give Jack a hard time finding them. She had proposed getting out of here because she didn't want to destroy the building where the hotel was located. At the same time, she wanted to take the fight away from Celine. But from the expression of the other party, it was clear that she wasn't going to agree to that unless Celine followed them. Denali hesitated for a moment as she gazed at Celine. She wasn't sure if the lady who had come over to attack them had other companions or not. So, she didn't think that it was good to risk taking Celine with her. Just as she was about to disagree with the proposition, Celine spoke. "I agree to that." Even though it was true that she didn't know why the two of them wanted to get out of here, she had a hint. It was definitely to ensure that they didn't destroy anything here. With all the hard work that Jack had been putting in order to set up the hotel as a monopoly, there was no way that Celine was going to allow it to be destroyed. Moreover, she had information about how the soldiers were killed. Olivia had already given her the details that she knew about. So, she definitely knew about the weapons that were possessed by those who were supposedly from the Stronghold. Even though she didn't know the real power of the weapons, she didn't think that it was any less than a gun. With a gun's ability, it could definitely lay the hotel into ruins. Celine, that is not possible. I cannot be sure about what is going to happen outside there, so, you will have to stay here, Denali stated. But you know that she won't let that happen, right? So, let us just go and avoid all that much trouble, Celine replied. Although she knew that this was going to be dangerous, what choice did the two of them have? Since she was the target, then it was true that she had to be present. Otherwise, why would the other party be fighting? I think you should take a look at. Denali wanted to say more, but she was forced to stop when she looked into Celine's eyes. At this moment, there was a great amount of determination and resolution. After spending a long time with Celine, Denali had come to know of her character. If she made up her mind, then there was no way that another person was going to change it that easily. Since they were going to leave, Denali decided to inform Jack about this. She had to make sure that he knew where they were, or else he was going to go around looking for them without any clue. When Samantha saw that Denali had taken out her phone, she asked curiously, "Whom are you trying to contact? Don't tell me that you are trying to call your partner so that you can fight me 2 against 1? I'm informing my boss that we are leaving. I hope you don't mind that," Denali replied nonchalantly. Samantha was surprised for a moment. But after thinking about it, she thought that perhaps having the boyfriend coming to the scene was also good for her. As long as she managed to beat Denali, then she was going to get the 2 targets at once. So, she didn't make any attempt to stop Denali from contacting Jack. She just stood at the side and waited. After Denali had informed Jack about the current situation, the 3 of them walked out of the room. In order not to attract more attention, Samantha had again put on the long overcoat. This hotel was located close to the outskirts of the city, so, the 3 ladies got out of the city just after taking a cab for a while. Even though the taxi drivers were surprised when they saw that the ladies were stopping in the middle of nowhere, they shrugged their shoulders as they left. Anyway, what the ladies were here to do didn't concern them at all. When they were alone, inside a forest that was just outside the city, Samantha stood in front of the 2 ladies with a smile still on her face. From the previous clash, she could tell that Denali was stronger than her. But, she was at an advantageous position considering that she was having her equipment on. Samantha believed that on the other hand, since Denali wasn't ready to fight, she had not brought over her armor. All the same, she thought that this was her advantage. She knew all too well about the advantages of the armor that she was putting on. That was the reason as to why, every moment that she dared to step out of the room that she always stayed in, she will make sure that she was putting on the armor. "Why don't we wait for him to come over?" Samantha gave a proposal. She wasn't worried that Jack, whom she had investigated a lot during the past few days, was going to cause her trouble. From the observations that she had made, she didn't find anything peculiar about Jack other than the fact that he had a subordinate who was Denali, who was even stronger than her. As for the methods that he utilized to subdue Denali or what he had offered her in return for her services, that was something that she was willing to ask for. That was the reason as to why she was looking forward to meeting Jack face to face. Denali had been thinking all along on how she was going to make the lady in front of her wait for Jack to arrive. But who would have thought that the lady was going to give the suggestion by herself? Beep. Beep. Denali was just about to agree to the suggestion when suddenly, there was an alarming sound coming from the wrist of the lady in front of her. Samantha didn't expect this as she hurriedly pressed something on her wrist several times. After a while, her expression turned grim as her eyes narrowed. "Are you kidding me? He already knows that I am here? Humph. It will take him some time to arrive here. By then, I will already be done with what brought me here," Samantha muttered loudly. Immediately after that, she charged towards Denali, ready to defeat her as soon as possible so that she can take away Celine before Eric arrived here. She wasn't ready to have her plans ruined for something like this. Since she had left the Stronghold, she had to go back with something.